it all starts, if we buy a part for $100 and we sell it for 120, we know we're making $20 on that part, right? But when you're bidding a project, the time is the variable that can really make or break your ability to, be profitable. And we're in the business, although we all like recurring revenue, we're still in the business of selling time.
We can pull reports pretty consistently at any moment and within reason tell what's on the truck.
It's really to protect them in case something were to happen, and also to reward them of like, hey, this accident happened, but you were doing everything exactly right, and we celebrate that stuff.
I think that the best companies are able to, in near real time, and I would say in near real time, they're tracking the inventory in and off the truck. When a tech has completed the job, whether that's a service call or an install, they have an understanding of what should or shouldn't be on that truck. I'm actually, I'm a little embarrassed to admit I don't have any coffee for today's call, so I've gone chemical. Yeah, so slacker. Yeah, I got off all of these energy drinks for a while, and I know I should. And people I love, respect, and admire tell me that it's bad for me, but I gotta tell you, it is convenient to have one of these around once in a while. I don't know how many folks were at ISC last week, but if you were, I'm sure you're probably just now recovering like I am.
Hey, speaking of Vegas, you did so good at karaoke.
Oh, Stas. Oh, now I question your integrity with that kind of dishonesty, I will say, sis, I had so much fun doing karaoke, and despite the rumors, all I had was club soda that night. So, it doesn't take much, but it doesn't take much to get me up and on stage. I think that was my first time doing. I can't ever remember doing karaoke like ever. So
Listen, it takes a lot of courage, and that I wanted to encourage you because it takes a lot of guts to get up there. And I cheered for everyone that went up.
I'd like to welcome everybody to Coffee Break with Jake. We have this call every Friday morning at 11 a.m. or most Fridays. Sometimes we miss it. Last week we were out at ISC and saw some of you there. But we welcome you to this call. The purpose of it is to bring together folks from all over the industry to share best practices, to help you overcome some of the challenges, to help you maybe streamline your operations. Today's call, we're specifically going to be operations focused with a particular mindset on managing your fleet of technicians, tracking them, scheduling them, managing inventory with them, and maybe reducing some of the paperwork that all of them love so much. I know that's probably a struggle for many of you because your technicians absolutely love filling out every piece of paperwork that your office requires, and I'm sure that they do it right every single time. If that doesn't describe your techs or the current situation you find yourselves in with them, I'm really happy you're on the call today. So first of all, I want to talk about tracking technicians, and this is specific to vehicles. We have had a lot of our dealers ask about fleet tracking, about tracking technicians, clocking in, clocking out. We've even had some folks talking about putting in cameras inside of vehicles. I can tell you that as I drive down the street, I'm always shocked to see people in company vehicles texting or watching, even in some cases, like I think watching Netflix while they're in like a company vehicle. I'm never surprised anymore to see that in personal vehicles. Because honestly, sadly, that's just kind of where we're at in the world. But it's really shocking to me to see it in people in their company vehicles. So with that, first of all, I want to ask folks, if you have any type of fleet tracking, if you're tracking your vehicles, would you go ahead and raise your hand for me? That's the hand raise function. It is not the raising your hand up. You can do that too, and I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I can't see it. So cool. Wow. A lot of folks on here actually tracking vehicles. Keep your hands up for me. I'm gonna jump around a little bit, and I'm gonna start with Taylor Sears. Taylor, so glad to have you on the call. Talk to us about what you're using to track your fleet of vehicles. Give us a little bit of, I know where you're calling in from, but tell us a little bit about where you're calling in from, how many techs you have on the road, and then what you're using to track those vehicles. Okay.
Taylor Sears. I'm a Silent Guard Security in Kentucky. We've got 2 offices, one in Lexington, Kentucky, and one in Somerset, Kentucky, and we've got around 30 employees total. About half of those are field technicians, and then we also have a fleet of outside sales. So we've got around 20-25 vehicles in the fleet altogether. So we use the Verizon Reveal Fleetmatic system. It's really nice for in terms of tracking locations. But then, Jake was talking about checking in and out of appointments. We use it in Kentucky. We have a unique situation where we have to pay occupational tax and file W-2s for every employee on every community that they work in. So for us, the GPS system is huge to be able to know where technicians are, when they're there, for how long they're there. So it tells us, speed. We have service reminders set up so the technician, then also the guy that oversees our fleet, gets notified when service needs are up. Oil changes. It gets notified of service alerts. And then we have forward. You're talking about the cameras. We have forward and rear facing cameras, and it's been a huge saver for us in terms of accidents. It happens having that many vehicles on the road. We cover, several hundred miles on a daily basis. I think we average, I believe it's like 600 or 700 miles our team drives a day. So we cover a lot of ground, and we've had more than one case where the video, whether it was forward or backwards, has saved us in an insurance case, in a claim. So that's what we use.
So when you talk about forward and backward, I want to talk about the GPS, but specifically because we got into cameras here, forward and backwards. Are there any cameras inside of the vehicle today?
Yeah, so our system, it mounts to the windshield, and it has a camera that faces the road, and it has a camera that faces the driver and the passenger. So we can see the driver, and I say forward and rear facing. So we have the ability to see in the cab, and it will even it does driving scores. So it'll tell us, information about people that are not paying attention to the road. It notifies us if they have a cell phone up, in their face. It notifies us of smoking in the vehicles, that we have a policy of no tolerance for that. It'll also give us speed alerts and all kinds of things. So it's actually way more sensitive than I would actually prefer it to be, because it wears our guys out. It chirps at them. It'll say, put the phone down, put the cigarette out, whatever. But it's a good thing in terms of just holding people accountable. We got a lot of information that we can get to.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good thing I don't have that in my truck. Chain smoking, texting, swerving all over the place, a lot of hard stops. Um, no, but seriously, it's really cool. I think one of the, we have seen some concerns amongst our dealers about technicians feeling like maybe it's some kind of invasion of privacy to have the cameras in there. To be clear, I just want to get out and say this. I don't think it's that. You're in the public, in a company vehicle. There is no expectation of privacy. I don't care what kind of case you want to make. I don't think there may be some text on the call. Let's be real. We're all adults here. If you're driving in a company vehicle, you should be, acting in accordance, not only with laws, but company policies. That being said, I'm sure that it is an adjustment for technicians who have not had that experience in the past. Can you talk to us, Taylor, about implementing that technology, what that transition was like for techs, whether you got any pushback on that, and how you overcame that?
Yeah. Yeah, a couple things. One, we made sure they know that we don't sit and watch the cameras. Nobody has time to do that. The way our system works, you can't actually get in and watch a live feed. You can pull video from the hard drive at any time. Like, I could get in right now and I can pull video from 5 minutes ago, but I can't just sit and watch live video of it. So it's very important that we told them that. And two, we just kind of portrayed to them, which is true, that it's really for their protection because the only time we ever look at any of the vehicles or the videos is when something happens with a vehicle. So I get notified of extreme hard braking. That's one of the only notifications that I get personally on the vehicles. And it's really just for their safety. I want to be able to check and see, did they hard brake because somebody pulled out in front of them? Were they not paying attention? And I can call and check on them. And I think they like that peace of mind to know that while they're covering hundreds of miles on a daily basis, somebody's actually watching out for them. Then the other thing is, a vehicle, although it's a moving rolling billboard, it's also a moving office. So we have offices or we have cameras within our office. So, it's really no different than us having cameras in the hallways of our office than it is to have a camera inside the vehicle. It's really to protect them in case something were to happen, and also to reward them of like, hey, this accident happened, but you were doing everything exactly right. And we celebrate that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think look, sometimes you're going to see pushback on these types of things. I would say for any company that hasn't implemented even just GPS tracking, but also certainly cameras, there is going to be pushback from technicians and salespeople, um, because it's something new, because maybe they don't understand the motivations behind it. I think this is a really good example of um, getting buy-in and understanding from your team as you implement new processes, because there are companies that will just implement a new process with very little communication, right? It's like, hey, we have this new technology. We're now watching inside the vehicles, and there's zero concern. I don't know that there's zero concern. Sometimes I think with some of the larger companies, they implement a new technology, and it's just really hard to communicate that messaging to everybody on the team. But kudos, Taylor, on change management there, and also ensuring that your technicians and the public are safe on the road because of your use of that technology. I'm going to circle back to you. I want to talk to you about some of that scheduling and the tracking with that, but I want to jump to John Tanner. John, thanks for joining the call. Can you speak to us about, number one, how many vehicles you guys have on the road, what that territory is, and how you've used tracking and/or cameras inside the vehicles to ensure safety and improve overall, I guess, efficiency?
Yeah. So we're a New England-based company. We have physical locations in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, but we travel in Vermont and Maine as well. We have about 100 and fluctuates, but let's say 140 vehicles as of today. We've had GPS, GeoTab is who we use, integrates with our enterprise system, and we've been using that for many years. Um, I would say we don't have any cameras in our vehicles today. It is a subject that we've been kind of bounding around with and trying to figure out whether we wanted to go in that direction. But we haven't pulled the trigger yet, as it were. There's pros and cons to both sides of it. I think that for us, we're just trying to figure out what's the value add, because it's a cost, and as a company, every penny counts at some point. So we're trying to figure all that out. But I think eventually there will be some kind of cameras, maybe forward facing, maybe rear cameras. Not sure we'll have cab cameras, but we might.
Well, the good news is people are such great drivers up there, right? So, I mean, anytime I've been driving around New England, I've been impressed with how courteous people are. Nobody cuts me off. Nobody's hard braking. I mean, it's just a really nice place to drive, right?
Well, we all our blinkers work because we make sure to fill the blinker fluid every day. Oh, that's right, work.
Real quick, I just want to I want to ask you about this. If you're, I think in vehicle cameras, it's good when you have video of somebody paying attention when they're in an accident, right? Like they're involved in an accident and you've checked the video and they were paying attention. They weren't texting. They weren't looking the wrong way, whatever the case might be. do you think, like, as a company with 100 and some, vehicles out on the road, we have to assume that once in a while, even the best driver is distracted. Is there any concern over potentially, as you're looking at video, is there concern of having video of somebody not paying attention? Does that, for the same reasons it's great to have video when somebody is paying attention, is it also concerning to potentially have video if somebody wasn't paying attention and involved in an accident? Does that even play into decision-making process?
I think that at the end of the day, it's a comfort level for us, right? It's less legal. When you get to a certain size, we're a fairly large company, 300 plus employees. Um, we're going to end up in court, right? I mean, we're a large enough target. If there's a problem, they're going to come after us. I mean, it just is what it is. And so that part of it is less of a concern for us. Really, it's more regards to, our technicians and how do we kind of work that piece of it, right? It is a bit of a, big brother kind of watch. I do like Taylor's position that, it's an office. And just like all our physical locations, we have cameras inside and outside. Why wouldn't we here? So, that is an interesting take, a spin on it. And I do find that one pretty intriguing, and it's something we'll probably bounce around with. But at the end of the day, the value is, let's say the driver did everything right and the video showed it, we're still getting sued. We're still ending up in court. Because again, we're a large enough target. So for us, it's more of a matter of, can we work with our technicians and not kind of get that all out of line, as it were.
Yeah. So, speaking of that big brother kind of feeling, right? Do your scheduling folks, is there, as you're kind of scheduling service on the fly, right? I imagine there's probably situations where you're looking at the schedule, or your scheduling folks are looking at the schedule to figure out, hey, we have this emergency call we need to get somebody out to. Are you leveraging that GPS data to kind of do that? And are there situations where, in some cases, because they're checking in, they might find somebody's not where they were expected to be? And how do you handle that?
So we have a huge TV up in our scheduling room that shows all the vehicles on the map. And we do use that to make sure that, when we get an emergency call, who's closest. That's a use of the technology that we've been using for years and everybody's very comfortable with. We do use it when customers often will call and dispute a bill. Oh, your tech wasn't here that long. No problem. We pull up the report. We look at it and we're like, you know what? You're right. Our tech wasn't there that long. Let us adjust the bill. Or here's the GPS data showing our tech in your parking lot for this extended period of time. So it's a billable call. So we do use those pieces. And I think the not in the right place at the right time, that the software has the capability of doing that. We've not really had great success with it. I think most of the time when we catch a tech in the wrong place, it comes through another channel, believe it or not. Because again, like Taylor mentioned, it's just not enough time in the day to constantly watch and look and see, especially after hours, nights, weekends, that kind of stuff. That's when those kind of events take place. And so it's less about using it for that and more about being able to track speeding, being able to track harsh driving. There's for us with a fleet our size, there's a little bit of an insurance discount having that stuff. So it's a bit of a money saver for us as well.
So somebody mentions in the chat, and this, they mentioned Amazon having an issue because they didn't pull a poor driver off of the road. Taylor talks about getting alerts on hard stopping. You were talking about speeding alerts and things like that. Do you have some type of plan in place that if you get a certain number of alerts, that there's some kind of proactive, reach out or correction done with that driver?
We don't have like a formal policy on it, but the fact that the guys know that I do call them, that kind of polices itself. Just checking on them. They know that we're watching that stuff. And honestly, we don't have as many vehicles on the road as John, and like all the guys that we work with, they know how we do things and what the expectation is. And we kind of have enough respect for each other that if they know I'm watching something, they will go above and beyond to make sure they're doing it right. But we did have one instance. We had a guy, to the point about the Amazon situation. We had a guy that we were kind of needing to let go, but we didn't really have a perfect reason for. And he called one morning with a flat tire, and he told us where he was, and we're like, that doesn't make sense. And so the story he told us of how this little incident happened did not was not validated by what the video said. And it finally gave us the leeway to be like, okay, this is our opportunity to move on. So we were able to use the information from the camera to solve a much bigger problem with this one particular employee. In terms of the other stuff, I would echo like verbatim what John said. We have a camera or we have a screen up in our scheduling office and use it for dispatching, especially as big of a service territory as we cover. We go in about 150-mile radius of each office, so we have to be efficient with where guys are and how that stuff works. The In terms of checking where people are, the only thing that has ever been an issue, and this is with an employee that's on salary, is we've used it to kind of keep tabs on lunch breaks and how long lunch breaks are. And we kind of have a policy where we trust but verify, and we trust that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing until we get have a reason to look into something. And typically by the time I'll look into something, I know I'm going to find it. I just need the facts to back it up. So that's it's not something we're watching in real time to see, did somebody take an hour and 20-minute lunch versus an hour. But if we find that it's repetitive, we have the information to sit down and having a conversation with them. And if it's not resolved from that point forward, then we just move on.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction too, Taylor, is that, what I'm hearing is that the technology is being leveraged more often in the future to investigate a potential situation as opposed to being used to micromanage techs on the road to the point that, if somebody's 5 minutes over on lunch, they're getting a phone call from scheduling, right? I'm sure there's situations where there's technicians that instead of taking an hour lunch, they take a 45-minute lunch, maybe a half-hour lunch. Sometimes it might be an hour and 15 minutes for one reason or another. But I think what you're identifying, what you're explaining there is that when you see that there's a pattern and something that needs to be resolved, then you can use that data to kind of investigate that. And I think as any of you that are on the call that are considering implementing technology like this, I would encourage you to consider operating with that mindset, because if you roll out tracking and then you very aggressively police it, you're going to have some real challenges with techs, right? And that mentality of, hey, you're 2 minutes over on lunch is going to be it's going to be a challenge. So I want to jump to Eric McKim. Eric, thanks so much for jumping on the call, Eric. And then we're gonna jump to another topic on this. But Eric, are you guys leveraging GPS and or cameras on your vehicles?
Hey, yeah. Hey guys, Eric McKim, Protect Security. We do leverage GPS. We have not gone the route the other folks have with cameras. We've looked at it and considered it, but we do definitely use GPS, and similar to what Taylor does, definitely monitor for hard braking. I think it's hard, sharp turning and some other things. And we actually work that into our quarterly bonus and have monthly bonus with the technicians, and half of our bonus is driven around safety.
Wow, I think that's that's a number one. It creates a level of accountability. It creates a positive incentive, right? So now we're not talking about just stick. We've got a little carrot here. And, I think it's important to have a balance of carrot and stick with any type of, compensation plan and KPIs. It's also interesting to me to know that you're tracking it on a monthly basis like that, because when we go back to the question in the comments about Amazon not pulling a driver from the road with an issue of unsafe driving. I think that measure, not only measuring it, but reviewing the metrics with at a regular interval ensures that 6 months in, 12 months in, you don't look back and say, gosh, I didn't realize we got so many hard stop, hard turn notifications on that driver. And then they crashed into, somebody and caused a serious accident. I would just encourage anybody that's, on the call that's looking at leveraging the technology. I don't know what that um, threshold should be. I'd love to know, Eric, maybe if you'd be willing to share some of the metrics that you have and what a reasonable threshold would be. I would say this, I'm a, I'm an averages guy, right? So like if I had a fleet of vehicles and I looked at how many hard stops they did, and I recognize that sometimes hard stops are unavoidable, right? I mean, traffic sometimes stops quickly and you have to hard stop. Sometimes, somebody comes into the road, you have to hard stop. But I think that you could very quickly determine what the averages would be across a fleet and then look for anomalies, right? Is that kind of what you did, Eric, or how did you set those thresholds and metrics?
I don't do it, but I definitely would be willing to share, have our installation manager ops director share the Excel spreadsheet that we utilize and kind of how they do it. It actually has half of it, like I said, is those GPS related components. The other half's related to tech utilization type rates that we pull out of the system. I know they have thresholds on speeding too that they monitor, and then they report out, like you said, on a monthly basis at our tech meetings. But yeah, I'm willing to send that over to you, Jake, and you can disseminate it. I'm open to sharing.
Cool. Yeah, and I think, look, the lesson I think in this is that if you're measuring it, right, measure it and measure it over time and measure it across vehicles and techs. Because when you look at what it should be, I'll tell you what it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be twice as many hard stops as any other techs, right? Like you shouldn't see that.
Right.
I'm not a safety and compliance guy, but I can say if somebody's hard stopping 2, 3 times more than, the average guy, maybe we need to look at that. Guys, I want to jump to time and attendance. I know we're talking about tracking vehicles, but sometimes tracking the vehicle doesn't give us the full picture, right? We want to know when somebody started their day. We want to know when somebody started on site. We want to know when somebody closed out their ticket. Sometimes you have a situation where a technician is on site, but they're sitting in the parking lot, and they've clocked out of that job, or they haven't clocked out of that job, but we know where they are. We just don't know what they're doing. And so I'd like to, if anybody's using a time and attendance app or software with time and attendance built into it, whether that's through your payroll company or the software that you use, would you raise your hand for me? Again, that's the hand raise button. And I'm going to jump to Taylor on this only because I've already discussed this in depth with Taylor, and I know he's got a really good answer on it. So, not gonna jump to some other folks on here as well, but we've talked about this at length, and I'm really impressed with the way that Taylor does time and attendance tracking, tech utilization. Taylor, I know we could speak about this for at length, right? Because we have, but talk to us about time and attendance tracking and what metrics you guys are looking at, specifically as it relates to tech billable hours and tech utilization.
So the short of it, we use two different things, and we kind of audit the information together. Um, and we use Sedona Office as our operating system. So Sedona allows us to let the technicians, they do three things. They dispatch, which means they're on their way, they arrive when they get there, and then they depart. So we're able to track their drive time versus their on-site time. And we utilize that information of when they say they're on the tickets versus our we use QuickBooks T-Sheets, or I think it's changed names, but that's what it used to be. But that integrates directly with our payroll company. So we use that for their timekeeping. So Sedona allows us to keep it too, but that doesn't account for all the time that they're in the office and clocked in, and then, time at the end of the day and all that stuff. So we pull out, the short of it is we pull the information on a monthly basis, and we look at every single technician, and we've got a kind of a pro forma that we run that tells us, how much time did they get paid for straight time? How much time did they get paid for overtime? And we build it into this file that also takes how much time did they spend driving and how much time did they spend on a job site. And then we can also from that see how much time is considered non-productive. So for us, I believe that, if you can use the information, you can figure out what your burden is for a technician by figuring out exactly how much time you got to bill for. We typically on an install, we're wanting to be able to sell their drive time and their job site time. So then if we know how much of their time they're working, so, if you factor in that a technician is paid full time for 2,080 hours, because of the way that we do PTO, I know that a technician is actually only at work for about 1,900 hours over the course of the year that they're actually at work. And then if you factor in that, there's only a certain percentage of that amount of time that they're actually productive, well, I know that, a full-time technician, we're actually only getting about 1,600 hours worth of productive time from them over the course of the year. So we were able to use all of this information to determine what do our labor rates need to be. And I figure that if we get the information correct, we can use that to set our labor rates. And then if we're constantly tracking how much time projects are taking on a plus and minus, one-off projects don't matter as much if the whole thing is accurate, right? So we do it on a monthly basis to see how much time did we sell, drive time and on-site time. How does that match up versus what was actual? And then that allows us to constantly be manipulating our labor rates and also our job that we factor into bidding to make sure that we're constantly accurate. And it's pretty amazing when you factor in, let's say however many technicians, let's say 13 technicians on average are full-time installing over the course of a month full-time. We typically look at that plus and minus of the labor, and we're within, usually less than 20 to 30 hours plus or minus over the course of an entire month. So this is something we're constantly looking at and dialing in. As our techs get more efficient, we can bid jobs more competitively because we can do them quicker. And we use this information every day, but really on a monthly basis to make decisions and change. And I could talk about this for hours, but
Well, and I love to Taylor and I, we have in-depth conversations about this, and anytime I get the chance to look at his reports and the way he digs into this stuff, it's just amazing to me because they're able to. For some of the folks on the call, your eyes are you're like your head spinning right now. You're like, oh my gosh, like they're tracking a lot of stuff. I'm not tracking this much stuff. Like, what am I gonna am I gonna be okay? You may not be, right? But you need to start looking at some of this stuff. I will say this. Some of the tracking that Taylor's talking about is very granular, right? Like we can get very, very specific on some of this tracking. And for a lot of the folks on this call where your head's spinning, you're like, I don't have time to track that, right? Like I don't have time. I would say that you probably do have more than you realize. You probably have more data than you realize because you can simply, if nothing else, start tracking payroll hours and billable hours. So like how many payroll hours do my techs have that I'm paying them each week? How many billable hours are we billing out either to service or to installation, right? And then you can start to do that really big math that Taylor's talking about on an annual basis. You get an idea of, hey, how many payroll hours do I have? What percentage of that is billable either to service or to install? If you want to really get a little bit more specific, you can start looking at how much of that service revenue was billable versus, billable hours that are going against all those maintenance plans that your salespeople love to sell without, any understanding of how much it actually costs the company, right? Hopefully you do, right? If you're Taylor, you know exactly how much it costs you to provide that free service to your customers. But then you start to throw in the aggregate. All of this math is so much easier when you look at it in the aggregate and you say, all right, payroll hours, billable hours, I have vehicle maintenance, I have insurance, I have workers, all of these things that come into play, your cost to do business, your cost of your technicians fully loaded for everything that you're, having to pay in. And then you divide that, right? And then you say, okay, how much is my cost? How much do I have to cover when I'm billing for one of these techs? You can do that even if you just do it annually, I think you need to do it more frequently, right? Taylor's setting a threshold and he's checking against it monthly, right? Um, but even if, as a starting point, you look at last year and say, hey, what are my costs? What percentage of payroll hours are billable? Start to come up with some of these numbers, and then with more frequency, monthly, start checking it, right? Does this prove to be true? I think a lot of folks worry about changing things in their business. Hey, can we change our service rates? Can we change how much we charge hourly for installations? With the assumption that, like, hey, we can't do this. We've been doing this for years this way, or we've been doing this for a year this way, or we just implemented a change 6 months ago. We can't possibly implement a change today. But I think what we forget is, particularly in a service-based business, most of your customers are not really having, hopefully, that many interactions with your company to where they're being billed all the time by you, right? Like if you have a maintenance, a maintenance plan in place with a big account and you're out there billing them every week for that, that's something different, right? That's something where I think you have to take a lot more time to kind of think about, hey, how are we changing this? But with your day to day, people don't get alarm systems installed by you every day, right? They had an alarm system installed. Maybe they had an alarm system serviced. I don't want anybody on the call to fear, hey, if I run these numbers, I might have to change things. And if I change things, my customers are going to be upset. Um, Taylor, can I ask you, have you guys changed your service rates based on this information? And how long does it take you to decide, hey, we have to make a change to this? And can you give some, I'm sorry, I'll just go on a tangent here. Could you also give some feedback to the folks that are listening on the importance of changing those rates as your costs fluctuate?
Yeah, we've just went through an increase in service hourly rates. So that just changed just recently. And that's based on, as our expenses are going up. And if we're using this information, we know how much we're working, we know how much stuff's costing us, we can constantly stay on top of that. But the biggest thing, it allows us to plan. So I think, I mean, back to like I think I said this earlier, but it all starts, if we buy a part for $100 and we sell it for 120, we know we're making $20 on that part, right? But when you're bidding a project, the time is the variable that can really make or break your ability to, be profitable. And we're in the business, although we all like recurring revenue, we're still in the business of selling time. So we've got to make sure that our time is accurate. So the information for us, we also look at we have different rates. So like a fire alarm has a different labor rate than a gate, different than just a normal alarm system or camera. We also have a lot of stuff we sell that have $0 labor rates built into them, because we're, to some degree, we're buying that account by selling a 3-door and a motion for next to nothing. And then we also have travel time. So we have different rates amongst all this stuff, and that's a whole other thing I didn't even get into. But we use the data to see like what are the average labor rates that we're selling stuff for. So we know the volume of we're selling of fire alarms versus we're selling of 3 doors and a motion, and we just want to make sure that that labor rate averages out to what it needs to be. And we look at that at per salesman to make sure that it's accurate. We use it to also see where I didn't talk about this earlier, but overtime. Overtime in and of itself is the least productive way that somebody can work because they're paid for an hour and a half. They're paid time and a half, but at most they can only work 60 minutes. So, you're losing a third of that time just by paying somebody an hour of overtime. So we use that when we calculate all the numbers. I didn't mention this earlier, but we call it the total hour value. So if somebody is paid 40 hours of straight time and 10 hours of overtime, we actually calculate their total hour value of 40 plus 10 times 1.5. So 55 hours they were paid for in that week. And we look at their productivity scores based on that number,
Yeah. I think that's a really important call out, particularly for folks that are stretching at themselves on projects, with smaller integrators that are, or even fully scaled integrators that take on very large projects, not taking into account overtime hours. as you're adjusting your pricing, right? Like if in order to take on a new project, you know that you're going to have to associate, overtime hours to it, that totally changes your cost, right? On a large project, time and a half is a big difference in profitability on that project. And I like the way that you explain that, Taylor, is when you're calculating the time, you're not calculating you're not calculating 60 minutes at time and a half as a cost. You're calculating 90 minutes into that project as opposed to 60. And that may be a hard thing for some folks to understand. Can you explain that? Because it is a very important distinction. We're not talking about a different labor rate. We're talking about calculating more hours into a job so that you can cost it more accurately. Could you explain that more eloquently than I can?
Yeah. So, well, I don't know if I can do that, but I'll try. So when we're doing our calculation in terms of trying to set what our labor rates are, we calculate that based on the total hour value that we paid them. So, let's say that the example I used, if they're going to work for 40 hours this week and then they're going to have 10 hours of overtime, we're going to pay them for 55 hours because they're going to get paid time and a half on 10 of those. So when we're going in to check our labor utilization rate and the amount of hours we're selling and all that kind of stuff and how efficient they are, we're basing that calculation of the percentage of their time that they're being used and productive based off of that time with the overtime included in that. So we look at that percentage. So let's say we strive. I pulled it up because I couldn't remember the exact number. Our goal, and this is arbitrary to everybody because everybody calculates it a little bit different, but in our method of calculating it, we try to look at their total utilization rate. We want 85% of that time to either be traveling or on a job site because to some degree we're billing for both of those times. So we look at 85% of that time that they were paid for, and we'll look at our field technicians, their salary over the course of the entire year. So it's not a technician that makes $25 an hour. We look at how much did they get paid for this entire year and how much of that was overtime versus straight time. And we use all of that calculation to understand what does it actually cost us to operate a technician for an hour. So we use that information, and that's probably not more eloquently than you said it, Jake, but that's the information we use to set what our labor rates are.
No, I thank you for that, Taylor. And guys, again, I think this is one of those things that if you're running a business with techs out in the road, you're billing for time, you really have to have a comprehensive understanding of what your true cost is to serve the customer because it's not the time on site. It's not. I think of John in New England where all the drivers are courteous drivers and there's never traffic, right, John? If John was billing strictly for his hourly rate that he pays tax and their time on site, that wouldn't account for, the time that they spend in traffic. John, can you speak specifically to that? Because this is something we're talking about Taylor in Kentucky. We're talking about American Alarm in New England. Traffic situation is probably a little bit different. Can you speak to that and how you guys are tracking, first of all, what you're using to track time and attendance and how you factor in some of that time not on site into your cost?
Jake, you're asking a very complex question in a 30-second response. I mean, you could set up one of you. I remember a few years ago, you used to have like powwows where you invited folks in. You said,
Yeah, I
"Hey,
think we
spend a
need to
couple of
do
days."
that, by the way. I'd love to.
You could
Yeah.
spend a whole week on this. I think, to point out what Taylor's saying is a lot of people don't realize that efficiency and utilization are two totally different calculations. And what Taylor's doing is utilizing both of those calculations to determine his burdened rate, which is really the right way to go about it because you sell 8 hours on a job, your tech completes the job in 8 hours. That person was 100% efficient, but for the rest of the week, they didn't do any work and you paid them a full 40, your utilization was 20%. And that's really the delta between, is my burden going to be effective when I bid my project out? We use our software nobody else here is going to have it. We went outside the box, brought something in and kind of molded it to us, but it's with a company called Infor. They have a couple of products, an MRP and an ERP, and we use the ERP. It's called ISM. But we can track drive time in and out on site. We track all that. We utilize that GPS data as well. And then we run our own set of calculations, so we understand our true burdened cost per hour. We also balance that against our inventory, where we've categorized our equipment into areas where we assign default labor rates. So we take let's say a wireless switch, and we say that switch is got a factor of 0.5 for labor, meaning every one of those you drag onto a quote, it drags over a half an hour of labor, as an example, right? And so at the end of the day, the salespeople kind of understand this is the recommended standard for labor, and then we can apply other things that ramp that up or draw that down. But that's, again, we look at that to make sure that it's staying current with whether techs are getting more efficient with a particular product line or less efficient with a particular product line. And we use all of that. We go through at least every 6 months and run all our costs to make sure that we have the right burden, and then we adjust accordingly. And we can adjust out at the branch level. So our software allows us to have different burdened rates depending on where the work is being performed from.
And just so everybody understands that too, it's one of the most obvious reasons that you would need to do that, John, right, is that your traffic may be worse in Boston than it is in Wallingford, Connecticut, right? So like,
You got it.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and that's a big reason. And the cost, the hourly cost for the tech, people are probably going to laugh, but we've got prevailing wage, which is union-based labor in our state. A lot of states have it. It's not unusual. Right now in Boston, prevailing wage is $99 an hour. That's what the tech gets paid,
Wow.
including benefit costs. So when you start getting in that range, like every second counts. You have to know where you're at. And if you don't, you'll end up broke. And a lot of people don't realize this, or maybe they do. But at a certain point, the single largest expense you're going to have with your business is your labor, it's your payroll.
Yeah.
By far, the largest expense you have is going to be payroll. And so if that's your largest expense, you need to make sure you're managing it as closely as possible. We're a service industry, so we have a very, very high ratio of compensation costs to total revenue. That's another thing you'll want to make sure you understand as a business is where is your total comp to your total revenue? Because most companies, if you track that, you'll find that needle doesn't have to move very far one direction or another. For us, it's basically 1.5% plus or minus off of a kind of a center line that we have, where, one side of that, we don't know where the money's going. On the other side of it, the police are coming in and think we're drug pens because we're printing money, right? And it's funny, it's a 3% swing, but only 1.5 off a center plus or minus, and it can really, really affect our business. So it's something you have to pay attention to. Give Taylor kudos. It sounds like you guys are all over it, so that is awesome.
Yeah.
So I think this is actually kind of interesting. It's been fun, but I think once you get the data, I love Moneyball, like the whole idea of how you can just use numbers to make decisions. And that's kind of how we try to do things. But we have been using it for something else kind of unique in terms of being able to measure how profitable these jobs are. You have to have the information. We pulled a report of every single project we did over the last 3 years and looked at what was the profitability of that job and how much recurring revenue did we create on that job. And then we dialed into it a little bit further to see if you make all things equal, how much money in terms of dollars of profit did we make per hour we spent on a job site? And then also how much recurring revenue did we generate on that project per hour we spent on that job? And we were able to look and see, 3 Doors in a Motion, we may spend 2 hours there and create $40 a month, but it's a loss up front. And then we may put in a gate that we sell for $15,000, but it creates no recurring revenue. So we dialed in and found which projects do we want more of, and we're using that information to invest 99% of our time, energy, and finances in terms of sales and business development, going after more of those projects that we want. But it all starts from the data being able to be collected and being accurate so you can make those decisions. It has nothing to do with operational efficiency, but it's helping us to grow our business by knowing what kind of projects we want to go after.
Definitely, you've attended the Barnes Buchanan conference.
I actually haven't.
Oh, you need to,
Yeah.
because what you're basically measuring is how to create a lifetime value for a customer based on the RMR, and what your hourly spend is to generate every dollar of RMR that you create. Yeah, it's great stuff.
I want to point out to the folks on the call that are listening, now we're not just talking about pricing, right? We're not just talking about, hey, how much do we charge for our techs? We're talking about where do we put them, right? Where do we focus our efforts on marketing? What directives do we give to our salespeople, right? If we start to recognize this is the highest and best use of the labor force that we have, where do we put all of our efforts, right? Like I have talked to so many times I hate this. This breaks my heart. I talk to guys that have been in this business for 30, 40, probably 50 years. And we sit down and we have a conversation about the next chapter for them, right? They're like, Jake, I think this is it. I think I'm ready to go. I'm gonna sell or whatever. And they spent that whole period of time doing the wrong thing. They went after those $15,000 gates and they didn't build RMR. They put in home theater systems, and all they created for themselves is calls on Super Bowl Sunday and no RMR, right? And they find themselves in a business that at the end of their career is not what they wanted. And so, I think that if you start out, or even if you start today, you say, hey, what is the business that I want to create? What do I want? Do I want RMR? Do I want profitable, projects? What is it that I'm looking for? Measure where you're at and start planning accordingly, and then truing up to that, right? Like, hey, this is our goal. This is what we want. This is where we're at today. This is where we're going to focus our resources. Here's how we're going to charge for it. Here's what we're going to tell our salespeople. And here's how we're going to incentivize our people with bonuses and commission structure that incentivizes the behavior that we want. You end up 30, 40 years from now with the business that you really wanted, the business that's very profitable. We're going to very quickly go into this because I promised we'd talk about it on the call today, and I think we can cover it quickly. I want to talk to you guys about, the other cost that's easier. I say easier. John says that labor is, the most important thing for you to really understand your costs there with your labor force, right? And it's challenging because units of input, units of labor have varying degrees of output, sometimes just based on their mood and morale, right? Labor is, you don't know what you get out of one unit of labor, right? It's totally different. Something that is easier to quantify is a unit of, a product, right? Inventory. That doesn't mean that inventory won't make you want to pull all of your hair out. It doesn't mean that it's not hard to track, but at least for every wireless transmitter, you get one wireless transmitter, hopefully on the, on a window, right? But I'd like to understand how many of you are tracking inventory in and out of vehicles. I know that there's folks that are on the call that are tracking inventory in and out of their warehouse. If you're tracking inventory in and out of your vehicles, would you raise your hand for me? All right, cool. I'm going to go to Chuck first on this. And Chuck, we're going to try to keep these real rapid fire. Inventory in and out. How are you tracking it on the vehicles? What are you using? What is the process? Does it drive you crazy?
Drives me crazy. We don't do barcoding or anything like that. We don't, each tech is in charge of their in-out, and each tech has their own warehouse, but we're not doing anything. I guess if you're talking immediate, no.
But you're tracking, like, so you know how many trucks do you have on the road?
12.
12 trucks on the road. If I asked you, hey, Chuck, you've got a job to complete today, and we want to know which truck has that stock, would you be able to tell me?
Yes.
And would you be able to tell me with confidence?
Service tickets don't post to the end of the month, so that's the only variable would be service tickets. Sedona office, since we don't bill every day for tickets, but jobs post immediately. Techs post all their equipment in tickets and jobs. So I could see which tickets have been done that month and figure it out.
I think what Chuck describes here is inventory tracking, right? That is not 100% up to date at all times. If anybody on the call is doing inventory tracking 100% up to date at all times, first of all, I want to applaud you because you'd be the first person I ever met that had their inventory 100% exactly right at all times. I think that the best companies are able to, in near real time, and I would say in near real time, they're tracking the inventory in and off the truck. When a tech has completed the job, whether that's a service call or an install, they have an understanding of what should or shouldn't be on that truck. I'll tell you where it gets hairy. It gets hairy when you have a damaged product on the truck, because sometimes that is not easily tracked, right? This is a product that's on the truck, but for one reason, or I'll tell you a reason, somebody robbed a part out of it. Guarantee you, if you went on any single one of your trucks and went through all of them, that there's some stupid part that somebody needed for a job, and it's not sold separately. It's in the box. You needed that resistor, you needed that bracket, whatever the case might be, and you pulled it out, and you were doing, you're taking care of the customer, you were getting the job done. But now you have something that you can't sell, you can't install, and unfortunately you forgot about it and you went on to your next job, you didn't tell anybody, and they schedule you out on that job. You're like, oh wait, I don't have that because I used that thing on the other thing, and it was really good at the time, but now I have this product I can't sell. John, talk to us about inventory tracking and how you guys, how real time it is, and how you avoid situations where you don't have, to the best of your ability, that you don't have the products that should be on the truck, or that they're not in saleable condition.
You're piggybacking the heck out of your questions.
That's not fair. I tell you what it is. I think it's the city.
Put up like a list. Like I can't even keep track of how many questions you have when you ask it.
All right, so just talk to us about tracking inventory real quick. How about that?
So I can't speak to Sedona, but in our product, transactions are distinctly separate from disposition of the ticket. We call it an SRO, service request order, that can be install or service. So the two things aren't tied together, meaning that I can post a piece of inventory to a ticket and see that transaction move in the system, but the ticket still has a disposition of open or whatever. So in that regard, we can pull reports pretty consistently at any moment and within reason tell what's on the truck. We don't barcode, and if anybody does barcode, listen, I'll fly you up to New England. I'll put you up. We'll wine and dine you. I need to know the secret because we can't figure it out.
I have to jump on that. Guys, we're in the distribution business, and everybody says you should barcode, but I'm going to tell you something. It's so hard to barcode. Barcodes get damaged. There's 15 different barcodes on a box. And then what's worse is if the only way to properly implement barcoding is to require barcoding. And if you do that and it's not there or it's not working, you're stopped. You're dead in the water. You can do nothing. And so after you see John and go up to New England and he wines and dines you, come down to Florida. I'll do the same. And sorry, John, but yeah, no, we hit a nerve there with it.
Listen, we can't figure it out either, and it gets even more complex when the manufacturer take cameras, how quickly they come and go, from the change rev, the barcode changes, like the whole thing just goes potato on you instantly. We tried, but yeah, so we can see very, within reason, we can see what's in a truck, what's been put to a ticket. We do have a challenge when you start to take a damaged item out, you create an RMA. We have a process that we tell the technicians, you need an RMA before you put it in your truck. So we force them to call, wherever they're returning it to get that RMA in advance. And we can see that RMA, and then we know we can see the part. But none of it's perfect. We do cycle counting through all our fleet vehicles. And depending on the results of your cycle count, you may be on weekly cycle counts, or you might be on monthly cycle counts, or maybe you're good enough that you end up in the random pool. And then we do an annual fiscal inventory. So we do a full company inventory in July. Takes us a few days.
And I want to just real quick hit on that, guys. You could have the best software, you could have the best processes in the world, you could have rock star people out there doing the right thing 99.99% of the time. Sometimes it's going to be wrong, sometimes there's going to be an issue, sometimes something is not going to get scanned. Whatever the reason is, you have to true up, right? Like you have to go through, you have to actually do those cycle counts, you have to do inventory, you have to pull absolutely everything out of the truck at least once a year. Because I can tell you that if you don't empty your trucks out once a year, one day you're going to fire a technician, you're going to go to clean out their truck, and you're going to find thousands and thousands of dollars of product that you didn't know you had on that truck. I can guarantee it. I've seen it happen. I have actually cleaned out the truck. I've, working for my dad, technician got fired. I'm cleaning out the truck. It's like, what the heck did he have on this truck? There's no way. So please, please, please do it. We didn't get a chance to talk about going paper. Oh, go ahead, John.
Just the last thing I want to throw in there is that we have standard stocking levels for each technician based on their usage over a rolling 90-day period. That helps us maintain what's on the truck so that the techs don't have excess. You got a commercial tech that just does access control. They don't do video. They don't need cameras on their truck. But if you do a standard stock across the company, you'll have technicians with equipment they never use, and then it gets bounced around and whatnot. So we do a rolling 90-day count, average use stock level for our technicians.
Yeah. So 100%, guys, standard stock levels, so important. Change it, check it. If you have technicians going to supply houses to pick up parts for basic service calls, you're wasting time. When we talk about efficiency, what a waste of time to send somebody to a supply house. I'm not just saying that because I want you to order all your stuff in bulk and in advance from me. I'm saying it really is a huge profit drain to send people to supply houses, particularly for service calls. A lot of times that's based on maintenance contracts and things. You'll never make that money back. So look at standard stock levels. We did not get a chance to talk about going paperless on this call. I'm so sorry. There's software out there. Some of the guys on the call, Steve Hayes is on here from Workhorse. Steve, can help you go paperless. We got Miles on from Field Hub, can help you go paperless. All kinds of solutions that are out there for going paperless. We might make that more of a conversation for another call. I want to thank those of you that joined the call today. I want to thank those of you that shared some really great and valuable insights on how you run your businesses. Thank you for that. For those of you that jumped on the call and didn't get a chance to ask questions or didn't get a chance to comment, we're still so glad that you're here, right? I want you to join us and feel free to ask your questions throughout these calls. If there's specific issues or challenges that you're having with your business, feel free to email them over to me. I'm always looking for great topics. Guys, if you do business with us today, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity to support you in your business. It really is a great honor of mine to print the logos of some of the really the best companies in the country on the products that they install. If we don't do business today, I'd love the opportunity to work with you. Please reach out. But whether you do business with us or not, you're always welcome on this call. There's not a requirement that you got to buy stuff from me, because honestly, selfishly, I want you on this call so that I can learn from you. And so please, please, please feel free to join us. We'll be back online next Friday at 11 a.m. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and I hope you have a great weekend.
You missed an opportunity to vote for Jake.
Vote for Jake. These guys, if they don't vote for me by now, John, I tell you, I'm going to be really sorely disappointed.